Hey, all right, so let's look at chapter 1.2. We're going to look at form, volume, mass, and texture. So first, this is in comparison to what we were talking about in 1.1. 1.1 we said 2D has height and width, but when you add depth, it becomes three-dimensional. So for example, the pyramid below, below is 3D as opposed to a flat triangle. And here's another, so this is, you've got 3D, and now we're going to talk about form. And as it says here, form is a two-dimensional object, has shape, but once it becomes three-dimensional, therefore it becomes form. I always gave this example in class because in everyday speech, whenever I would talk about an automobile, I'd say, oh, that one has a boxy shape, or that one has a van-like shape, and I was referencing to SUVs. So I thought that this might work, having these examples. So if the correct way would be to say form. So when you look at this child illustration of a police car, you can see it's flat, it's made from shapes. Now form, it's like a three-dimensional shape is what we're saying. So form, it just means it has depth. Your book uses the Great Pyramids in Egypt as an example of that. So on the left we have a flat drawing, and then we have a photograph, which means we're saying it is the pyramid is 3D. There's geometric forms, just as there are geometric shapes. So here the artist welded these geometric cubes and cylinders and created a kind of like a movement where you start from the top and kind of zigzag down to the bottom of the base. And he did that because he worked on trains and he was thinking about motion, and that became a part of his concept. Organic form just means that it's not regular. It's more derived from nature. And this is a glass blown piece. It's titled Batman, but to me it reminds me of something that would come out of the ocean, I guess. I'm not sure what that would be, but that is just, intuitively, that's what I would think. But anyway, so this is your comparison. Here we have organic. Next we have a relief and an in the round. So here we have two sculptures with dragons. The one on the left is called a relief because it is a paper sculpture that is supported on a backing on a wall. Now the one on the right does not have to have a support from a wall. It is self-standing, and you could completely walk around it from all sides. So in your book it uses a high relief example. This is a Roman relief, and it tells a story of an imperial procession. You can tell it's really 3D because of the highlights and the shadows. This one is an in the round example. Another way you could say that is freestanding. Here you are encouraged to walk around Venus as you do. You see her from different angles. Here's the front, and then here's a side view. It's different than if you could see the sculpture in the back where the man is standing. There you would say, okay, he has a front side and a back side, and it wouldn't require you to actually walk around to get the full effect. But that is what the artist has done with this sculpture. So now we're going to talk about volume. This is also another element of art. You can have open volume or closed volume, but all that we're saying is it occupies space. This is an example I found Googling of an open volume, and I thought it was pretty neat. I imagine this is made from welded metal. This is from your book. It's also an example of open volume. It's called Ghost Rider, and they're little tiny sculptures that are hanging on, I would guess, like a small metal wire. And you can see in this image, there's probably a third metal ring that we can't see, but that's to control, to make an overall face. So if we go back to this one on the left, you can see here's the ear, the jaw, the mouth, the nose, and the eyes would be here. And what's really cool is if you look at a detail, what makes the one larger head are little tiny small heads, which we call busts, from different places around the world. Mass. So mass is an element. That means we're saying it has weight. And artists can also use that to their advantage as well. Jeff Koons is an artist, and I've actually seen this one in person. Even in person, it looks like an inflatable. It looks as though I could walk up to it and I could touch it and it would give because it looks like air would be in it. But it's actually metal that's been painted to look like it's an inflatable. So it's actually really heavy. So there's something kind of comical with the fact that we think it's light, that we think we could just throw it around, and that it would float on water, but it wouldn't do. I could not throw that around, and it would just definitely drop to the bottom of the pool. This artist, hers is not comical. Hers is more like a memorial for people. That there was this whole block that was destroyed. This is in London, and she poured concrete into one of the homes and then ripped off the door and the walls and everything, is my understanding. And so what you're left with is basically from that mold, it's the concrete of that house. And they eventually took this down as well, but there's something kind of nostalgic and kind of, if you walk by it, it's that you would take in consideration of the people who actually lived there. Lastly, we're going to look at is texture. There's a lot of different ways an artist can also use this to their advantage, and it is also an element of art. I found this Italian artist online, and he has different materials he works with, but I like wood in particular. And you could tell there's the smooth, and then there's the rough. And the rough, if you touched it, you could imagine getting a splinter. But it's really incredible, and you kind of wonder, like, what is his purpose in that? And he's saying he's trying to reflect emotions and think about our human roots is his main point. This is from your book. It's called Cloudgate, but everybody calls it the Bean in Chicago. His choice of surface was reflective, and so it encourages you to interact with it because you can see your own reflection, and when you touch it, it's smooth. He also encourages you to walk underneath it. So, and I've had 3 students I've seen it, and they said, yes, you just want to touch it when you when you see it in person. And lastly, subversive texture. So this is a surrealist artist, and that means that they work with ideas that come from the subconscious. So what they're saying here is by having actual animal hair on the saucer and teacup and spoon, that it will contradict the conscious logic that you would have when you view it, and it would refer to tactile memory. And it basically, you would know, I'm not going to drink out of that because I don't want animal hair in my mouth. Okay, we are going to stop there.